right, we are live. All right, everybody. Welcome to the very first Meridian's virtual wine tasting. So the idea with this is that if any of you are watching this, you likely have already bought the package of 3 wines from us, and you are welcome to drink them at home. At your leisure, skip around in this video if you want to drink 1 wine at a time. If you want to have a party or, a socially distanced party, family party. All 3 bottles for the hell of it, no judgment. So do as you please. And the idea is this: we're going to have fun, and we're going to go through and taste these wines. This is also the first time we've done this, and so we're doing our best to figure out what works as far as the media goes. So hopefully the volume's okay, hopefully the video quality is okay, and I'm sure as time goes on we will simply improve it. I mumble and swear a lot. I will try to do neither of those things. We'll see. So Jess here is a rock star. She's our rep with Easterly Wines. Total badass, knows all these wines through and through, and a lot of what we carry. So I think we're just going to launch in here and start drinking some wine. Also, fun fact, it's 10 a.m. And this is just when it works. So we also do not judge day/pre-lunch drinking during COVID quarantine times, because that's just 2020. So however you want to enjoy these wines in your own time and space, you do that. All right, Jess, let's hit it.
Greetings, everybody. Hopefully I'm loud enough. We have chosen 3 really interesting, spectacular wines, hopefully for your Friday night's enjoyment.
Or Thursday 10 a.m.
Or Thursday 10 a.m., whatever. We decided to stick with France. All 3 wines are from France. We have a red, we have a rosé, and we have a white. And they are all both quite unique in their own right. But I think we'll start, obviously, with the Savoie. We're going to start with the white wine first. So, this is a wine that is made by a man named Philippe Viollet. And Philippe Viollet is a 2nd-generation winemaking family from Savoie. Now, Savoie is a region in France that is very, very close. It sort of borders Switzerland. And these wines are almost as close to Swiss wines as you're ever going to be able to get. Swiss wine rarely makes it into this country. So this, for me, is such a treat. And this is actually my favorite region of France to drink from. So the Viollet family has had farms in Savoie since the 1960s, and they have been making terroir-driven wines since then. Savoie hasn't always been in fashion, but in the past 15 years, wines from Savoie have really found their way into the mainstream. They are very food-friendly. They are lovely. They are light. They are filled with minerality, and I hope you'll really enjoy this. They vary quite differently. There are 4 very important grapes that they use in Savoie, and the first being Jacquer. Jacquer is generally the first varietal you'll see on any white wine from Savoie. Chardonnay, Altesse, and Chasselas. So those are the 4 grapes that are actually in this wine. And if you notice on the bottle, those are also the grapes that they use in Switzerland as well. And if you notice on the bottle, there is sort of a little Swiss flag. And it is just because they share borders, and they actually share wine as well. And some of the vineyards cross the border.
They get along.
They get along very well. So this is a Vin de Savoie. A Vin de Savoie is sort of the AOC within Savoie, and this is very close. These grapes are grown very close to Apremont. Apremont was where the first family vineyard was, and that's very close to Chambray. Now, these are very high altitude grapes. I mean, everything is grown in the mountains. They're sort of very narrow, trestled little rows of grapes, and they're grown on these very sort of sunny hillsides. And despite the cold temperature, these grapes get a lot of sunshine.
Is that why they can do it so high and cold?
Exactly. And the growing season is actually quite long in Savoie. There are, as I said, 4 red varietals, but there's only 2 varietals of white varietals, but there are only 2 red varietals that are grown in this area, and one is Gamay and the other is Pinot Doni. And a little Pinot Noir as well. So I think we should try it.
Let's do
Let's
it.
taste it.
That's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
It's light, it's lean, but not too lean. There's a really nice citrus edge to it.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of.
It's very tart on the finish, but it really fills your mouth.
It does. It's got just enough weight.
Yep.
Really, really balanced acid. A lot of cooler climate, higher altitude wines. Acid can be their calling card, but sometimes it's out of balance, it's out of whack, sometimes it's too racy. The acid on this is perfect.
It's a pretty elegant bottle of wine, if you ask me. I think there's a lot of other Savoy whites that can be much lighter in style,
Yeah.
and then you have other ones that are much weightier in style, and those tend to have a lot more Chardonnay than they do Jacquard.
Yeah.
Jacquard tends to keep it light and very fragrant.
Yeah.
This, for me, the acidity is what is going to keep this wine very food friendly, and
Yeah.
it's wonderful with things that are really high in fat.
Yeah.
So-
It's so lean it'll cut through those fatty dishes.
Exactly. So if you can find, it's great with fish. Any fish that has like butter in it, saumon, or any of those sort of lighter white fishes that have this kind of buttery, light sauce to them, the acid will cut right through. And if you can get your hands on any special cheeses from Switzerland or from this part of France, like tome, any kind of tome or raclette. Josh has a special cheese that we cannot pronounce.
Yeah. Arwasser.
Arwasser from Switzerland, and it's a wash rind cheese.
Yeah. Washed rind, sort of in the same family as a raclette style cheese. This is a seasonal one that it's a raw cow's milk cheese that is it's a seasonal treat for the sort of Oktoberfest season.
Yeah, so this wine also is from what they call the Combe of Savoie, and this is the one area that you will find almost this exact combination of indigenous varietals. So you'll find sort of the 60% Jacquard, 30% Chardonnay, and then the rest will be these kind of funny little indigenous varietals like Altesse and Chasselas.
I love the lingering sort of lemon zest quality without it being too astringent, or like I said, with that acid still being in balance. So it's a really perfect one.
Yeah, it has for me, it has a little like a meringue, like a lemon meringue finish. It's kind of egg white.
Yeah.
It's a tiny bit pasty, but it's so beautiful. And I wish we had cheese, but I just had breakfast, so.
We'll just have more wine.
Exactly. So that is the Vin de Savoie, and I would encourage you to also look for other wines from this area. There are wines from surrounding appellations from Jura and from Bougie. Wines from Bougie are really amazing. They are they have sweeter, sparkling wines, and they are bright fuchsia purple, and they are so sexy and so gorgeous, and they're perfect for any sort of festivities or parties. So when you go to your socially distanced party, I would advise you to pick up a bottle of Bougie Seldon.
I told you Jess was good at this.
So that is the Savoie Blanc, and I think we will from Philippe Vielle. Now I think we're going to move on to this is one of my favorite rosés, and I tend to sit on the heavier side of things with rosé. I don't prefer a rosé that is screamingly high in acid.
Yeah.
I don't want to take antacids after I drink my wine. I really want my wine to support my food, and I want my food to support my wine in a way that's sort of really healthy and gut friendly.
Yeah.
And for me, when I have rosé, I tend to sit on the darker side of rosé. I prefer rosés that have more weight to them, a little lower acid. Rosés that really focus on the fruit.
Yeah.
And for me, this is sort of the ultimate Provence rosé. It sits in that weightier category. The name of the wine is called, it's Tout près des étoiles. Tout près des étoiles means closer to the stars. And the name of the winery is Bastide de Duluth, which is Fortress of Toulouse. And this wine was made by Domaine Dubois, Bertrand Dubois, was an enologist in France to some of the very best vineyards in the Loire and in the Rhone, and also in Burgundy as well. And after 20 years of making wine and helping other people make their wine, he said, you know what? got some prime property. Let's just do this myself. So thankfully they went into the wine business for themselves, and this is an estate wine. Oh, by the way, these are both estate wines. These are domain wines. These are wines that are grown on the estate. They are hand-picked. They are hand-harvested on the estate, and they're bottled at the estate as well.
Yeah.
So Bastide did do, yes.
Sorry to interrupt. The other point too that I forgot to mention, to talk about pricing. So 18 on this guy and 18 on the rosé as well. So these are both in a pretty affordable price range. That was another part too that I should mention earlier.
So this is from a 54-acre plot in Poucheville. Now Poucheville is in Provence, and the interesting thing about Provence is that Provence is the only other French wine growing region other than Bordeaux that classifies its wine growing regions by domain and house and estate rather than vineyard.
Oh, I never connected the dots on that.
Very similar to like the 1855 Bordeaux classified.
Yep. Yeah. I never connected the dots.
Estates in Bordeaux, and wine has been made in Provence for like the past 2,700 years. It's
I didn't realize the tradition in that part of France.
in Provence. So this Poucheville is like 20 miles east of Saint-Tropez and the Mediterranean.
Yep.
So this, again, sits in a little bit of a weightier category. And this, for me, is
Because
actually...
of the warmer climate.
Because of the warmer climate, exactly. And this is a little closer to a Bandol, which is another region of Provence, a really wonderful, fantastic region of Provence. So it's weightier, and the predominant varietal is Grenache. So we have Grenache, we have Rolle. Rolle is Vermentino. Vermentino is grown in Bandol, and that is what they use as well in Bandol, along with Mourvedre, to kind of keep it, gives it a little spice and a little bite. The Grenache makes it really round and full, and the Rolle gives it this beautiful fragrance, and it helps.
It's super aromatic.
Yeah, it's very, very aromatic, and the wine is a sort of an old-fashioned pink color. It's got a little bit of blue tint to it, and it's if I recall, let's see.
The nose is super floral. I can't pick that one flower, but super, super floral on the nose. But not, so floral, but not perfumey. Sometimes when wines are perfumey, it almost has like an artificial floral aroma, and this is just like,
So I love the weight of this wine. It's really silky. It's round, it's soft, but on the back palate, on your finish, it's got some really lovely acid and some bite, and that's the Mourvedre kind of kicking in. It's tart. This is really, really fantastic with spicy food. Like this is when I have Indian food, when I have Thai food. This is where I'm going. This is what I want. I want this exact rosé. I don't want. Yeah, I mean, being that this is an estate rosé, you know, compared to something that you might pick up at like Hannaford or you know, like a bin somewhere at a grocery store. This is a bit more special. I mean, you know, these are hand-picked grapes, which they pick, by the way, at like 1 a.m.
Oh, that's really
These
cool.
are they hand-pick them and hand-harvest them like right after midnight. And sometimes I try to do it on a full moon.
Oh, that's cool.
A little bit of a biodynamic.
Yeah, a little magic sprinkled in there.
Exactly.
And the point that Jess was just making too about, you know, these wines versus more commercial wines, it's commodity driven, so they're sourcing grapes or just straight juice from wherever they can for cheapest. And so what you get, it might taste okay, but it's a very homogenized product, which doesn't mean it's by default a bad thing. It is just totally different than a estate terroir driven wine that has a lot more character and very different vintage to vintage too, because it's subject to what happens in this one place this one time.
Exactly.
The floral notes are really cool. It has a little bit. Strawberry is kind of overused when describing rosé.
This has strawberry,
but it is there, so it has a little bit of that classic,
like fresh heirloom strawberry.
Yeah, strawberry rosé quality. But a lot of really other nice like tropical fruit, almost like this like
guava.
I was about to say papaya.
Yeah,
totally.
Guava,
so
papaya.
Not sweet, not a sweet fruit, but the aromatics of those like that like tropical fruit kind of crunch on the finish with that acid.
Yeah, and I also get a lot of stone fruit as well. And there's quite a bit of minerality in this wine, which again, that acid and the minerality is going to keep really going to cut A, the spice in food, and B, anything that's
really good.
you know, this is probably also really lovely as like an aperitif or something to start a meal with some really beautiful, like super creamy, you know, triple creme sort of dauphinois brie. There's a ton of stuff in the cheese cabinet we should have opened, but at 10 o'clock in the morning it didn't seem
Also,
quite appropriate.
picnic wine, aka
Total
day
picnic
drinking
wine.
Hike,
Yes.
actually having a picnic outside, enjoying the last days of fall. I love, you know, rosés and then other kind of fun styles, Vino Verdes, things like that. For literally 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you want something refreshing. Yeah, and this definitely scratches that itch for sure.
And the other thing I did want to mention is Josh actually got the last of our rosé of this Bastille de Dulune rosé this year. We have sold a ton of rosé. Rosé has been sort of a big hit this summer, as it has been really in the past few summers, but this one especially.
Oh, yeah, we blew through rosé, and I was pushing it because I love rosé.
Yeah, if you want this, anything above and beyond what you got with your sample bottle, I would encourage you to call Josh immediately and get what he
one
has.
additional case, and then tell sure.
And that's it. But this is a lovely fall weight rosé as well. Anyway, so that is the rosé. We've done the Savoie, we've done the Provence, and now we're going to go to sort of our unusual suspects. This is a wine from Domaine de la Piffidière, and the winemaker's name is Olivier Bélanger, and he is quite a character. He is, oh, thank you. I need to finish. So, Olivier Bélanger is from Touraine in the Loire Valley, which is really right in the center of the slopes of the Cher Valley. And Touraine is notorious for their Sauvignon Blanc. They produce a Sauvignon Blanc that is much weightier and oilier and has more oomph, less acid, but more body and quite a bit more fruit than Sauvignon Blanc from other parts of the Loire, like Sancerre, and in and around the outside of Muscadet.
If you're curious about that, sorry to interrupt, we do have one specifically. I shouldn't rep it, it's not one of Jess's wines, but it's Pierre Oliver Bonhomme. I have his Touraine Sauvignon Blanc, so if that sounds appealing, I have one that really scratches that itch.
Right, you know, for me again, too much acid in a wine really can throw off a wine for me. And I prefer something that's just a little more tempered, a little more restrained. I don't, you know, the showy New Zealand pink grapefruit thing has been a bit overdone, and I prefer something a little more complex. So anyway, Olivier Bélanger makes these wines, and it is actually a natural wine. It uses native yeast, natural fermentation. I think he may use a tiny bit of sulfur, but that is just to keep the wine stable.
Quick note on sulfur, again, sorry to interrupt, but when we talk about natural wines and low sulfur wines, for contrast, if you get a bearing, if you grab a wine off the shelf at the supermarket, you're looking at 200, 250, 300 milligrams of sulfur per bottle, which is a pretty substantial amount. Wines in this category, and to an extent these ones as well, you're looking at under 75, under 50, strictly natural wines under 25 milligrams of sulfur per bottle. So at a point it's so low, it's negligible. And so that's what we specialize in, low chemical input, or in this case, zero chemical input.
So Domaine La Piffidière was sort of the brainchild of Olivier Bélanger, and he's a really interesting guy. He is obsessed with indigenous varietals and old vine wine.
Oh, cool.
And he goes around slapping the hands of all the newbies that like to rip up all the old vines. And he is known as the hand slapper in this part of France, and he is really taking it upon himself to save some of these older varietals and to focus on the old vines that have been planted and to really make sure that they stay healthy. In the Loire, there's something called esca. Esca is a fungus that grows and turns a vine into a sponge, basically, into like a giant mold spore. And it ruins the grapes, but you don't really know what's happening because you can't get into the grape. You can test for it.
Yeah.
Some of these vineyards are huge, and there was Esca's sort of a few years ago ravaged the Loire Valley. So really focusing on these things that have kind of antique rootstock is really, really important.
Yeah.
So Mon Tout Rouge, Mon Tout essentially means my everything. My everything rouge, red. This is a wine that's sort of like everything but the kitchen sink.
Oh, cool.
Anything that is showing its full potential in that one particular vintage, you know, he will decide amongst any of those wines, anything of his everything, to put into that blend. And every year the blend changes. But this year it happens to be an indigenous varietal from the Loire called Pinot Doni.
Oh man, I forgot that was in this. I love Pinot Doni. We have a
So
few
good.
others on the shelf, and they are just fun, lean, floral,
Yep.
herbaceous reds. But sometimes really dense fruit, really, really complex.
So there are also rosés as well.
Yeah.
So we have, do you have the Patrice Collant?
Yeah, oh yeah, I do, yeah.
So there's some sparkling, most
Yeah.
of them are made into pet nats. Petit Lot Natural.
That's the Pearl Gris, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
the
that's
Pearl
an
Gris.
awesome sparkler. Yep.
So that Pinot Doni is just a widely used grape there. Not like a ton of it is grown, but
Yeah.
they use what they have. So this is, the majority of this is Pinot Doni, and the rest is Gamay. So in the Loire, especially in this part of Loire, in Touraine, they focus on Cote, which is Malbec, Cabernet Franc. They focus on Gamay, and they focus on Pinot Doni. And Pinot Doni is like, comes in fourth with those wines.
Which is a shame because it's so damn
It's
good.
so delicious, but it's
Yeah.
also a lighter wine. You know,
Yeah.
most of these wines, I want to check the alcohol while we're on here.
Good point.
Right, so most of these are pretty, like this is 11%. The Savoie is 11% alcohol,
Yeah.
which is really low.
Yeah.
The Bastide et du Lune, it has Grenache in it.
It's gonna be a little bit higher because you have
It's going to be high, right? So
Sure.
this is 13.5.
Yeah.
But this, you know, when you look on the back, okay, so this is 14.1.
Oh,
And I'm surprised it's actually such high alcohol, but the truth is it drinks a very, very light, chillable red wine. I like this wine with a bit of a chill on it. This wine is really fantastic with, I love this wine with lobster, like a lobster roll. I do.
That's cool.
I really do like it with like a lobster roll. I like it with
I can see the fruit working to be like a really refreshing, you know, relief from just the heaviness of the lobster.
right. So again, these wines are hand harvested. They use native yeast. I think it has like an 8-day carbonic maceration.
Oh, cool.
Yep, they're lightly filtered, and I think they're grown in this kind of like sandstony, and there's some limestone and some flints. So this guy only farms, Oliver Bellinger only farms 10 hectares of property, which is very small. He bought this property, and he vinifies his wine at his friend's place, and he ferments the wine and bottles it in this old vacant cellar of an old man
Oh,
who
cool.
stopped making wine in the Loire, which is like, I think a half of a mile down the street from the
That's cool.
thing. So, and he really believes in cooperatively made wine, and the truth is, it's nice when everybody gets a little piece of the pie of making wine, and the whole community involvement piece is really important in France, especially where a lot of the larger vineyards have been bought out. It sort of saves the smaller guy and allows them at a reasonable price to get their wine out there into the world and to be fermented and bottled and aged in oak, if it needs to be aged in oak, at a very reasonable cost without the overhead. You know, the insurance is insane on owning a vineyard. I mean, just, you know, one bad year alone, if your cellar is not as tight as it should be, it can make or break a winery. So having a community-funded cooperative is really, really important. They do that in Bordeaux. There's a huge cooperative in Saint-Emilion, and it's one of the most important ones in the world. It's huge. And each winemaker gets to vinify his wines separately. He has a choice of whether or not he wants to combine his wines and blend his wines with the group's wine, or just do it separately for a small added fee, and it gets bottled there as well. So
That's so cool.
anyway, he is he farms a very small plot. Domaine de la Péfutière is a very, very small select winery. I mean, he is a no-joke winemaker, and he focuses on really fresh, clean wines that sit on the natural side of things.
Yeah.
What they don't scream barnyard. They are clean.
Yeah. No, this is exactly what I want in natural wine. It's
Exactly.
clean, it's expressive, it has a nice earthy quality, but it doesn't go into barnyard territory.
Right.
It's not too rough around the edges. It's a pretty polished product.
It is really polished. And we're all sold out for the year. Josh actually also has the last case of this, believe it or not. That's sort of why we picked these wines. Were in high demand, very low yields of these wines. These guys don't make a lot of wine, and I appreciate that. And I appreciate when someone puts so much thought into a bottle of wine. These are all terroir driven. These are all wines that represent the exact place that they were born. The wind, the water, the air, the people, the climate, everything is in each of these bottles, and they represent that exact plot of land. And that's how Easterly Wine buys wine. This is how we decide what we want to pull on.
You are so damn good at selling wine.
It's true though. We pick
No,
wines.
it is true. We work a lot with Easterly. We have a great relationship. Easterly is one of our top 3 distributors in Maine that we buy from. For that exact reason, there's just such quality, such expressive, just cool, fun, interesting, dynamic wines. A lot of favorites. A lot of you watching this, a lot of your favorites, a lot of stuff you all come in and buy on the regular are wines we bought from Jess and Easterly Wines.
The last thing I do want to say, I think this
I
would
know
actually.
it's like 10, but
Okay, let me have a little more. This would be really fantastic with anything that you might pair a Pinot Noir with. This has the weight of sort of a Pinot Noir from Oregon. It has not as much bite, but it has that weight, and it has the fragrance as well. And this would be lovely with salmon. It would be really great with. There isn't anything I want to see.
I mean,
This is really versatile.
Yeah, as I'm drinking this, all the fall fare.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Just roasted veggies.
Yeah.
And soups and stews. What I love about this is the same thing I love about Cabernet Franc. Pinot Dany and Cab Franc are very different grapes, but they can achieve the same effect of being floral, of having nice, dense red fruit that's also balanced with powerful tannins. Powerful isn't a stretch, but very, very grippy tannins, almost like the same tannin quality you get from like drinking a black tea. That's the tannin quality I get from this wine.
Exactly.
And so it has, for a light wine, it has grip, it has strength, but it's just so pretty and so expressive.
And it's organic.
Yeah.
Don't panic.
Yeah, I like that. And not just ham up the fall thing, but the earthy quality, I mean, it's getting a little bit goofy, but literally comes through to me as like leaf mold sounds gross, but like that.
Wet log.
Just that
through the forest.
fallen leaf kind of like
Absolutely.
earthy quality that in New England we all love when it comes on. So yeah, this is a really badass fall wine.
Josh said he wasn't going to swear, but
I didn't say the F word once.
I've heard a few.
I didn't say the F word once.
It's 10 in the
I
morning.
did good. I didn't mumble too much. I didn't swear up a storm, so this is the win.
Thanks for tuning in, folks.
Yeah, right on. This is our first one. Total experiment. We are just winging it and figuring out what works going forward. So I hope you all dug this. If you are watching this and you have the wines, you've already enjoyed it. If you're watching this just for the hell of it and to have fun, give a call. We may still have some of the tasting packages or the wines in stock. You can buy off the shelf. You do not have to buy the prepackaged tasting package, so to speak. You can just buy them off the shelf. That's why we bought the extra cases. And thank you all for tuning in to Meridian's first remote, virtual, 2020, whatever this is, wine tasting. This is actually
COVID
fun.
special.
Yeah, this is actually pretty fun. So right on. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Happy fall.